Hello, Internet. So I use YouTube a lot, and I use it for a lot of educational purposes for various eclectic hobbies. The thing I've found is that there's either a whole bunch of things on there that I have no interest in, or I'm seeing a bunch of things that are on very popular things, and there may be 2, 3, 10, 15 different things on that one item, but nothing kind of for the eclectic person like me, or not nearly as much. So I'm going to do some occasional videos on things that I find interesting that there just isn't any other videos on. And it's going to be about my various hobbies. So the first thing I'm going to do, and this, for all I know, maybe the only video I ever do, is going to be about fountain pen ink. And specifically, I want to kind of discover just live with you about one of my interests in the fountain pen hobby, probably my one most interesting thing in the hobby, which is rare or vintage inks. And I got a nice collection, but I recently came upon some very unusual ink that I'm very interested in trying out and see what it looks like with you. And this is actually a French ink by a very old company called Herbin. Now, Herbin is a company that has been around since the year 1670. If you really want to find out more, you can either look at a marketing piece of theirs, or you can go onto Wikipedia. As far as I can tell, one has taken the information from the other. Herbin, well, they talk a lot about the fact that they have old ink and old they've been around for about 300-400 years. They don't really delve that much into their history. They just give a few points now and then. But one of the things that has always fascinated me is one of the inks that they've used. They call it their current ink is called Violette Pensee. I can hold that up there for you. Those of you who know the ink know that this is not the normal bottle. I actually took a bottle of Ackerman ink and changed it around because the bottle that this came in is actually not very good, but I changed it around to something that was a little bit better. The thing that's interested me about this ink is they say in their marketing that this ink was created by Napoleon when he was running France, and it was used for most French government work up through the 19th century, and in the 20th century it was the ink that was required to be used as school ink up until the 1960s. There's also something in there about it was also used as an antiseptic for soldiers during World War I. I got no idea about that one. But they don't really tell you whether or not the ink has been unchanged, or if if it was always this thin. Herbin inks are always kind of thin for fountain pens. But it was one of those things that just kind of interested me enough that I've always kind of used it as the ink that I use when I'm actually writing letters of importance to people. So while I was doing my various searching on eBay recently, I came across a seller that was selling something called antique ink, and it is ink in a little capsule. And I'll focus on this in just a minute, but I just want to explain what it is. I haven't actually opened this yet. The guy was selling Herbin Violet ink. Now, the oldest ink that I currently have is from the 1920s. This actually appears to be ink from around the turn of the 20th century, possibly a little bit earlier. A lot of times back then, the ink was manufactured and shipped out, especially to industrial people, in capsules or in dried form, and when they got to their final destination, they were then reconstituted or changed up to make it easier for doling out and shipping, a lot cheaper to ship, and also for bottling. They would use local water back then. And the guy that was selling this had a bunch of them. I bid on a few. I actually won 2 lots. each one of these capsules, it says, is good for 1 liter's worth of ink. So I actually have a liter bottle here, and I am going to try to constitute this into this. Then after that, we're going to try something interesting. We're going to try to see if it will actually work in a fountain pen. And the reason I say work in a fountain pen is because ink is not all inks are created equal. Inks that are used for art, India ink, things like that, more permanent inks, traditional iron gall, although there's newer iron gall, that's not the case, but traditional iron gall, that all has stuff in it that can actually clog the feed of a fountain pen. The feed of a fountain pen is very fine. It has very thin fins in it, so certain inks just will not work in it. However, Herbin's ink especially is rather thin. You can actually tell that in their current ink that is manufactured for fountain pens. In some cases, I actually don't like it. It's colored water for all intents and purposes. However, the Violette Pensee ink is actually quite decent. I think it holds pretty well. It's got no permanent properties whatsoever, but neither did old ink back then either. So, I mean, it kind of keeps with Herbin's tradition. I can find no historical reference for the Violette Pensee or even this violet ink. There is nothing that I found, at least in English, and I can't read French. We'll come to that in just a moment. That actually goes into what the ink looked like, even manufacturing of it back then or anything like that. So I'm kind of taking a lot of guessing in terms of what we're looking at here. A little bit about violet ink. And this, again, there's not a lot that I can find, but so I'm kind of going on things that I have gleaned from other people and from my own things that I've seen. If I'm wrong, feel free to comment in the comments. Who knows? This isn't going to be a regular thing. We always think, when we think of ink traditionally, 300-400 years old, as black ink. That's actually not the case. It was actually iron gall ink. Now, iron gall ink is kind of a blue-black, and it actually just blackens over time as it oxidizes. Little bits of iron, it just oxidizes as it hits the oxygen. That was used as permanent ink, engraver's ink, engrosser's ink. The average person that could actually write, they generally use the dyes that came from flowers, and the primary color that they used back then was purple. It was the affordable ink. It was the people's ink. So this is actually, most of that stuff either doesn't survive, or we don't think much of it, or it's kind of darkened over time. But we don't usually think of that kind of ink back then as being the color that people would use. But the average person that could afford ink and just wanted some standard ink to write with, they would use a color like purple just because it was easier to manufacture, it was cheap, and in a lot of cases it was what could be homemade and was not iron. So, that being said, let's go fast forward to what this is. As near as I can tell, this is pretty much close to the turn of the 20th century. I have no idea if it's vintage 1900 or vintage late 1800, or even if it's meant for fountain pen. Let's see if I can zoom in here, see what I can get, see if I can focus you on this. I try to get you in view. There we go. So, and let me try to focus. Alright, so it's a little capsule. It's in a paper wrapper, and it says étouffant, which I actually can't find a translation for étouffant. I don't know what it means. Then you see the words violet, which is violet or purple. Then it says this. Let's see if I can get this in focus. There we go. Now, I don't know if you can read that. Let's see if I can read it for you. Yeah, trying to compose. All right. Well, let's do it this way. It says, Jeter cet etui content et contenu dans un litre d'eau. Oh, I'm not even going to doing this. Basically, I had to translate it. And what it says is, mix this with 1 liter of boiling water. Boiling water. Basically, that's what it says. If somebody can provide a better translation, do it in comments. And then it says at the bottom, Herbin Paris. So, I have not opened this yet. I have not opened any of them, so I'm not sure what I'm going to get. So, let's see here. I'll try to zoom out. And I'm not going to zoom out for the moment. Okay. So, that's fine. We can just open like this. Sorry, as you can see, I'm not used to doing internet or YouTube-y things like this. So I'm breaking the seal. I have 9 more of those, and this one will probably be the one that lasts me my whole life. So, because 1 liter I'm not going to use up. So I haven't decided what I'm going to do with the other 9 yet. I do, however, have them. So as I open this, we have, here we go. Looks like we got a little bit of residue. I'm going to put that in the garbage there. Okay. And then we have a capsule. It is plastic. In it, let's see if you can see this. It's you don't break it, but if it looks kind of greenish gold to you, that is correct. This is, and it looks kind of like flakes. It's I'm gonna hope that it constitutes pretty well. But it actually looks like little tiny rocks or little tiny nuggets. I'm going to do something stupid here and stick my pinky in, see what happens. Nothing. Alright, so it is. This looks like a little tiny rock. Okay, sorry about that little cut there. First time doing a video, and I had a little bit of tech problems, so rather than go back and do what I started, I'm going to kind of pick up right about where I left off. So, as I was saying, I also fixed the focus while I was at it. These little rocks, which they just fell out, so a couple of them did. These little rocks, they're kind of they're kind of a goldish green. So did they turn over time? I don't know. Is this what they originally looked like? I don't know. But we are going to put these into the bottle in just a moment. And then we are going to constitute the bottle and see what happens. So I'm going to recap this for a moment so that I can reset the camera here. Try to reset the camera. And let's see what happens. Okay. So here we go. I'll try to fix that focus a little bit. Alright. Oh. Bottle. One of the things I like about this is a 1 liter bottle from IKEA. There's a lot of them out there that I've found for various prices. This is one bottle for $3. You can argue whether it should be a amber bottle or a clear glass bottle. I don't mind this being a clear glass bottle because, assuming it works, it will be stored in darkness, so I'm not too concerned. So let's pour this in. So let's see if I can get this close. So there, this actually shows the color fairly well. This is a good representative of what it looks like. This is all it is. So they're saying that this, with boiling water, this greenish gold looking set of rocks, with some boiling water, will equal 1 liter worth of purple ink. So let's find out. And once we do this, I'm going to stop taping again, and we're going to let this cool down, because for boiling water, putting boiling or even very hot water in a fountain pen, not one of the greatest ideas a person could come up with. So let's get the water. I've got right here a funnel, which I will put right here. And I shall return in a second. I am back. I had 1 liter set in a pot boiling. Let's see what happens. Whoa! Yeah, I'd say that's turning purple. I'd say it's not quite 1 liter there. I may have lost some of it. Yeah, I definitely lost some of it, but we'll let this perk around a little bit. And then I will measure this, and I will re-add the and I will reconstitute the rest. But as you can see, this definitely became purple. Very much so. So yes, whatever those green gold rocks are, they did in fact become purple. So stay tuned, and I will return after I have gotten a liter and it has cooled down. Be back soon. Okay, I'm back for just a moment here. I have filled, this is now 1 liter's worth of ink, or thereabouts. It might be a little bit lower, but that's okay. So the first thing I noticed was there were still rocks in the bottom. So I shook it before I got the rest of the boiled water ready. I will shake it again here. And no, I did not burn myself the first time. This just seems like common sense. Shake it. It is a sealed cap, so that's one of the things I like about this bottle. And the rocks appear to be gone, so this looks like it did its job. The other thing I do want to point out, though, while I was working on it, this is my hand, my left hand. I'm trying to show my middle finger here without actually sticking up my middle finger. There we go. This is what it looks like after 2 vigorous scrubbings with soap. So whatever Herbin did to their inks in the future to keep their to get their inks very easily washable, they did not do it in this stuff. So this stuff, I don't know if it's going to go in a fountain pen or if it's going to destroy a fountain pen or not, but we're going to see. There's also a little bit of residue still on the table and even a little bit on the glass, which I should be able to clear out with a little ammonia. Fortunately, I don't see any on my clothes, but yeah, this stuff does not get off skin. So now it looks like I've got, let's put this back on here. It looks like the rocks are now fully dissolved. It did dissolve. I mean, they dissolved quite perfectly. There is a little bit of mess here. It's because I'm an amateur at it. And the bottle is, of course, full of boiling water, so we are not going to be putting this anywhere for a couple hours. I did notice, though, that the ink does kind of slip down off the bottle, so it doesn't look like it's going to be permanently stained onto glass like some of the other inks are. However, there is at least a permanent quality to this where it's not coming off that easily with water, at least on the skin. It's something that would make the folks at Noodler's Ink quite proud. So that being said, I will now give this a few hours to cool. I will clean up the rest of my mess here. I will make a few other attempts to see if I can get the ink off my fingers. I'm not so sure how confident I am of that, and I will be back shortly. Okay, it's been a couple of hours, and I'm back. The ink has cooled down quite noticeably. The first thing I've noticed here is the bottle of the new modern Herbin Violette Pennsee, and this is the bottle of the ink that we just constituted. Now, the first thing that I noticed is it still has kind of a noticeable froth in it. It's neither here nor there. I just kind of thought it was interesting. I assume it's going to go away. The color is surprisingly close. So as far as I can tell, and I'm not an expert by any means, they look like the same ink. So we're going to do a test here and see what happens. I have loaded a pen with it, but I have not tried it yet. So I will do this live with you. First of all, we're going to do kind of a sample test with the known quantity, the Herbin Violette Pennsee, which, as I said at the beginning of this video, this is not the original bottle. I put it in a much more useful bottle, an Ackerman bottle. I have not yet decanted out that ink. Our test pen for the original Herbin ink, excuse me, the new Herbin ink that I know will not harm the pen, is this. This is one of my favorite pens. My favorite pen is a Waterman 100 year. This is called a Bexley Gemstone. And Bexley, which is a very nice maker of pens, made one of their first pens kind of an homage to the Waterman 100 year. I love ribbed pens. I love the way this was designed. It took me a great deal to actually get it, but it is one of my absolute favorites. I actually didn't buy the pen made. I was able to find a gentleman who was able to source the parts for me, and I bought the parts, and I was able to get the pen made by the fine folks at Independence in Indiana. They did an absolutely fantastic job. I love this pen. I have absolutely zero complaints. They were marvelous people to actually assemble a pen for me, which is not something in their normal area of expertise. They fitted it with a Bexley steel nib at my request, and again, no complaints. This pen is an absolute dream to write with. It's just one of my favorite pens in the world. So here we go. This is what Herbin Violette Pennsee looks like. Yes, I am left-handed. Whoops. Okay, well, I wasn't expecting that. There we go. Now there you can get a good idea of what the ink looks like. I'm left-handed, so, you know, what can I say? So, it's a very wet ink. Let's see if you can still see it here. It still shows a little, you can see a little bit of it glistening still. It's not dried, and I had a little bit of a splotch there, probably because I just filled this pen as well. A little bit of residue on it. Usually this ink is so well behaved, it does absolutely nothing like that. It is just, you know, easy to work with. It's not an everyday ink for me. It's my correspondence ink. But that is Herbin Violette Pennsee. Now, because I have no idea what is going to happen with this ink that I put in a pen, if it's meant for fountain pens or not, I am not using a pen I care very much about, like this Bexley Gemstone. I am instead using one of my $4 gin house. I have no idea which model Jinhao this is. Let me see if I can up the brightness a little bit here. Get this a little bit brighter. There we go. So this is a Jinhao pen. Cost me about $4. And I apparently just got a splotch on it. By the way, the ink does wear off eventually. It got onto my sink when I was cleaning stuff out, and it did not come off with the normal stuff. I had to take a cue from one of my other really good inks that it's very controversial like, but I do. It's called Noodler's Bay State Blue. It came off with bleach. I had to use bleach to get the remnants of this stuff off. So here we go. Let's see what happens. This is my very first attempt to write with it. Ooh, and it writes. This is J. Herbin Mystery Vintage Ink. So it kind of looks the same. I think this may be a thinner nib than the one on the other ones because it's putting down a slightly lighter look. However, the appearance is pretty darn close. Oops. Again, I just started it, and this is a much cheaper pen, so I'm not sure it's going to be as free-flowing or if it's just not meant for fountain pens here. We're going to give it a little bit of a try here. It's a little bit lighter. It doesn't go as deep. Let me put one under. There we go. So this top one is the J. Herbin that you can buy in the store today. This bottom one is the vintage ink. Oops, try to get this closer. So the thinner bottom one, I don't know, it might be the same color. Looks pretty close. Let's see if I can whiten up the this thing. Cool. There we go. Cool that off a little bit. Yeah, everything's got a little bit of a blue cast. Sorry. Let's give it a little bit more. So, testing the vintage ink, and yeah, it streaks a little bit. I am kind of curious about how this is going to do with a little bit of a water test. Let's give this, let's let it set a bit. And let me go get a couple of drops of water here. I'll be right back. Okay, so J. Herbin, traditionally not very good with water. Not very good with any kind of permanence. Here, let me do a thing with the known quantity. It does have more of a luster. That could, of course, just be the age of the ink. But let's give it a little squirt here. So we're going to start with squirting the known quantity here. See what happens. And we're going to put a little bit here on the old vintage stuff. See what we get. Give that a few seconds. Let's see what I can do here with fixing that temperature a little bit more. Alright. So let's wipe. Well, that actually stayed pretty well.
Sorry, I'm not sure.
And that I see zero fading on that, so I have no idea. I can't really tell if one is more waterproof than the other. The Violette Pensee is not waterproof. At least that stuff. And there, it's getting a little bit of a trail. Hard to tell if it's clogging. The way I'm going to know if we've got an actual clog here is after a couple of days of it in the pen. If the pen seizes after some writing, which I will do more writing with, then we'll know that it clogs up. Otherwise, this may be safe to try in a pen that might be a little bit wetter with a little bit nicer nib. I'll give that a shot, and I'll probably update on the normal stuff, the normal places, Fountain Pen Network, Reddit, Facebook Fountain Pen page, and we'll see what happens. You can, of course, just ask me. And that's it. So this is a bottle of 100-year-old ink. I will be... I'm not sure what I'm going to do with this. I'm going to at least decant it into something a little bit better to use. If it does turn out to work well with fountain pens, it is probably going to be the ink that I use when I need to write somebody a special letter. I try to use special pens if I have an important letter to write, and I've been using special ink. This could be the specialist of them all. I got 9 more capsules of them. This one is probably more than enough to last me my entire life if this turns out to be pretty good, so I have not decided yet what I'm going to do about the other 9. I might keep one for a rainy day, do something with the other 8, but 100-year-old ink by J. Herbin. It does exist. Their claims, at least, that they are that old still hold true. I know nothing about the origin of this ink, but this violet does look pretty darn close to the Violette Pensee that is available today. I'm willing to say it's almost the same. Oh, someone asked me about the smell of old ink. This is, of course, before they liquefied the inks and added so many other things, but it has no smell. I use distilled water in here. There is absolutely no smell in this that I can think of. So the smell that you're kind of used to thinking that you equate with old ink is more along the lines of the Parker Solvex and the RC35 in Schaefer. This is decades before that would have come out, so this doesn't have any of that. And I did use distilled water for it too, so I'm not anticipating any sort of significant change or trade-off with that as a result. But this is it. I'd say subscribe, but don't bother subscribing because I don't know if or when I'm ever going to be doing anything else. And yeah, that is it. That is the end with J. Herbin. Thank you very much.